Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku learned from pro heroes early? Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world is not built on equality. It is built on power. Izuku Midoriya had learned this lesson at the age of 4, sitting in a cold doctor's office, the smell of antiseptic burning his nose while a man in a white coat crushed his dreams with an X-ray transparency. But learning the lesson and accepting it were two very different things. Acceptance required a surrender that Izuku, despite 10 years of evidence to the contrary, simply could not manage. The afternoon sun of Muzurifu beat down on the pavement, baking the asphalt until it shimmered. Aldera Junior High was letting out for the day, a flood of black uniforms spilling into the streets. Laughter, shouting, and the casual display of minor telekinesis and transformation quirks filled the air. Izuku walked with his head down, clutching the straps of his yellow backpack so tightly his knuckles were white. He moved with the practiced invisibility of prey in a predator's ecosystem. Don't make eye contact. Don't walk too fast. Don't walk too slow. Oi Deku! The voice was like a crack of thunder, accompanied by the smell of burned sugar. Nitroglycerin. Izuku froze, his shoulders hitching up toward his ears. The air temperature seemed to spike. Katsuki Bakugo didn't walk, he stalked. He and his two lackeys cornered Izuku against the lockers near the shoe rack. Bakugo's face was twisted into that perpetual sneer, a mix of arrogance and genuine irritation that Izuku simply existed. I heard a funny rumor, Bakugo said, his voice low and dangerous. He slammed a hand against the locker next to Izuku's head. Smoke curled from his palm. I heard you're applying to UA. Is that true? Izuku trembled, clutching his notebook to his chest. Hero Analysis for the Future, number 11. It was his lifeline, his hobby, his obsession. I mean, there's no rule against it, Kaken. They got rid of the quirk requirement years ago, and, ha! Bakugo snatched the notebook from Izuku's hands. You think they'd let a quirkless loser like you in just because the rules say so? You're a pebble, Deku. A pebble on the side of the road. Kaken, please, give it back. Bakugo looked at the notebook, flipping through the pages. For a second, his eyes scanned a diagram of Kamui Woods, noting the detailed sketches of branch tensile strength. He scoffed. Stalker notes. This is all you are. A fanba. Clap. Bakugo smashed the notebook between his palms. An explosion muffled by the paper ripped through the spine. When he pulled his hands away, the notebook was charred, smoking, and ruined. No! Izuku gasped, reaching out. Bakugo casually tossed the burning book out the open window. It arced through the air and landed in the koi pond below with a sizzling hiss. If you want to be a hero that badly, there's a quick way to do it, Bakugo said, turning his back, his lackeys snickering behind him. He looked over his shoulder, his red eyes gleaming with cruelty. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life. The hallway went silent. The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Izuku stood there shaking. Tears pricked the corners of his eyes, but he bit his lip until he tasted iron. He didn't say anything. He couldn't. He just watched Bakugo walk away, the king of the school, the future number 1 hero. He's wrong, Izuku thought, though the voice in his head sounded weak. He has to be wrong. Izuku retrieved his notebook from the koi pond. The carp swarmed it, nibbling at the burned edges. Stupid fish, he muttered, shaking the water off. The ink had run on some pages, but most of it was legible. He hugged the soggy mess to his chest and started the walk home. He usually took the main road. It was longer, but it was safe. Heroes patrolled the main thoroughfares, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, and Tea Lady. But today, the shame of the encounter weighed on him like lead. He didn't want to see the bright colors of the heroes. He didn't want to see the crowds cheering. He wanted to disappear. He turned left, ducking into the labyrinth of back alleys that crisscrossed the older district of Muzurifu. The shadows here were long and cool. The air smelled of damp concrete and old garbage bags. It was quiet, the city noise reduced to a distant hum. Izuku flipped through his damp notebook as he walked, trying to salvage the entry on Backdraft's water pressure limits. If Backdraft narrows the aperture of his hose, the PSI increases, but the recoil implies a skeletal reinforcement quirk, or just massive core strength. If I were to fight him... He stopped. The air in the alley had changed. The smell of garbage was overpowered by something sharp and metallic. Ozone? No. Acetone. Up ahead, about 50 meters down the narrow passage, the alley turned into a dead end blocked by a chain-link fence. But it wasn't empty. 2 figures were dancing. No, not dancing. Fighting. One was a blur of black cloth and pale skin. The other was a hulking mass of gray, spiky protrusions. Izuku slammed his back against the brick wall, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. A villain fight? Here? No sirens? He peeked around the edge of a dumpster. The villain was tall, wearing tattered street clothes. His skin wasn't skin. It was covered in long, gray quills that looked like hardened plastic or bone. He laughed, a grinding, unpleasant sound. "Give it up, Eraser!" the villain shouted. He flexed his shoulders, and a volley of 6-inch spikes shot out from his chest like bullets. Thwip thwip thwip. The hero in black moved with impossible fluidity. He didn't block. He flowed around the projectiles. He ducked under one, twisted his body over another, and launched himself off the alley wall. His neck was wrapped in a long, gray scarf that seemed to defy gravity. Izuku's eyes went wide. Goggles. Jumpsuit. Capture weapon. That's Eraserhead, the underground hero. A legend among the deep dive forums Izuku frequented. He was a myth to the public, a ghost who hated the media. Seeing him in person was statistically more unlikely than winning the lottery. But Eraserhead was struggling. The hero landed in a crouch, panting. One of his arms hung slightly lower than the other. A graze on his thigh was bleeding, staining the black fabric. Persistent, Eraserhead grunted, his voice dry and tired. His hair floated ominously, his eyes glowing red. "You can't erase a mutation, idiot!" The villain, whom Izuku mentally dubbed Needlepoint, taunted. "My skin is hard. Even if you stop me from shooting them, you can't touch me without turning into a pincushion." The villain was right. Eraserhead's quirk, Erasure, could stop the emitter aspect, the shooting of the quills, but it couldn't get rid of the physical spikes covering the villain's body. Eraserhead was a close combat specialist. He couldn't hit what he couldn't touch. The villain charged, turning his shoulder into a battering ram of spikes. Eraserhead leapt back, using his capture scarf to snag a fire escape ladder and swing upward, but the villain fired a quill that severed the scarf's grip. Eraserhead fell, rolling to avoid a follow-up stomp. Izuku watched, paralyzed. He's going to lose. The terrain is too narrow. Eraserhead needs space to maneuver his capture weapon, but the dumpsters and the narrow walls are choking his range. Izuku's brain, usually a chaotic storm of anxiety, suddenly went cold and still. The fear remained, but it was compartmentalized, shoved into a box so the data could flow. He looked at the villain. Quirk, spike projection. Likely keratin-based. He shoots them with pneumatic pressure from pores in his skin. Izuku watched the villain fire again. A volley of 3 spikes aimed at Eraserhead's head. Eraserhead dodged, but barely. The sound, Izuku noted. There's a sound before he shoots. A intake of air. Like a gasp. Then he watched the villain's skin. Immediately after the spikes launched, the gray armor around the firing pore looked soft. Pink? Regeneration lag, Izuku mumbled, his voice a whisper that barely left his throat. He has to grow new spikes to replace the old ones. It takes 1, 2, 3 seconds. The villain laughed, preparing a massive volley. He inhaled deeply, his chest expanding. He's charging up a shotgun blast. If Eraserhead dodges left, the ricochet off the wall will hit him. If he dodges right, he's cornered. Eraserhead seemed to realize this too. The hero tensed, preparing to take a hit to close the distance. No. He'll die. The words ripped out of Izuku's throat before he could stop them. He stepped out from behind the dumpster, his damp notebook clutched like a shield. The armpits! Izuku screamed. Both the hero and the villain froze for a split second. The villain's eyes darted to the scrawny middle schooler standing in the filth. He can't shoot while he's reloading. Izuku yelled, his voice cracking but the words flowing like a torrent. The skin is soft for 3 seconds after a volley, and he doesn't have spikes under his arms because of the friction when he moves. It's a hinge joint. He has to lift his arms to aim the chest blast. The villain snarled, turning his aim toward Izuku. You little brat. He raised his arms to broaden his chest for the shot. He lifted his arms. Eraserhead didn't hesitate. He didn't question why a child was giving him tactical data. He operated on logic, and the logic was sound. The moment the villain's arms went up, Eraserhead's hair dropped. He blinked, deactivating his quirk to conserve moisture, then reactivated it instantly. But he wasn't looking at the quirk factor. He was looking at the target. The capture scarf lashed out, not to wrap, but to strike. The weighted end of the cloth snapped forward like a cobra, carrying the momentum of Eraserhead's entire body. It struck the villain directly in the unprotected, soft skin of the armpit. Gah! The villain shrieked, the nerve cluster taking a massive impact. His aim faltered, the volley of spikes discharging harmlessly into the sky. Eraserhead was already moving. He slid across the pavement, coming in low. He swept the villain's legs. As the spiked man fell, Eraserhead targeted the only other spot Izuku had implied was weak, the open pores where the spikes had just launched. Eraserhead drove a knee into the villain's solar plexus, knocking the wind out of him, and wrapped the capture tape around the villain's neck and mouth, avoiding the spiked body entirely. He tightened the bind, cutting off the air. The villain struggled, thrashing, but without air, the pneumatic pressure for his quirk failed. 10 seconds later, he went limp. Unconscious. Silence returned to the alley, heavy and suffocating. Izuku stood there, chest heaving. The adrenaline that had propelled his outburst vanished, replaced by the crushing weight of reality. I just yelled at a villain. I just interfered with a pro-hero. I'm going to get arrested. Oh my God, I'm going to jail. Eraserhead stood up. He adjusted his scarf, hiding his mouth. He looked at the unconscious villain, then turned his bloodshot, terrifying gaze slowly toward Izuku. Izuku squeaked. He took a step back. You, Eraserhead said. His voice was gravel. I'm as sorry. Izuku bowed so fast he nearly headbutted his knees. I didn't mean to get in the way. I saw the retraction rate and the joint physiology, and I just moved. Please don't arrest me. Eraserhead stared at the kid. Green hair, trembling like a leaf, wearing a middle school uniform that was slightly scorched, and clutching a wet, burnt notebook. The hero walked forward. Izuku flinched, closing his eyes, expecting a scolding or a slap. Instead, a hand snatched the notebook from his grip. Hey! Izuku opened his eyes. Eraserhead was holding the soggy book. He flipped it open with his thumb. Hero Analysis for the Future. Number 11. He looked down at Izuku. You wrote this? Why yes, sir. Eraserhead turned a page. He scanned it. Then another. His expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed slightly. He landed on a page near the middle. A sketch of the hero's snatch. Sand transformation. Weak against liquids. Likely difficult to maintain form in high winds. If neutralized with water, the resulting mud would be heavy and slow. Best capture method. Rapid hydration followed by cement dispersal. Eraserhead looked at the boy again. You analyzed the villain's refresh rate. 3 seconds? Why yes, Izuku stammered. The pink skin. It's highly vascular. It needs to supply nutrients to regrow the keratin. It's a biological limitation. And the armpits? Basic biomechanics. If he had spikes there, he couldn't lower his arms without stabbing his own lats. He has to have a range of motion. Eraserhead closed the notebook. He tapped it against his palm. You deduced that in, what? 30 seconds of observation? I guess? What's your quirk? The question hit Izuku like a physical blow. The old wound opened up. He looked at his red shoes. I don't have one. He waited for it. The pity. The dismissal. Go home, kid. Leave it to the pros. I'm quirkless, Izuku whispered. Eraserhead didn't say anything for a long moment. He looked at the villain, a B-rank criminal who had given him trouble for 20 minutes because of a bad matchup. Then he looked at the quirkless kid who had solved the puzzle in 30 seconds. What is your name? Eraserhead asked. Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya. Eraserhead tossed the notebook back. Izuku fumbled to catch it. Go home, Midoriya, Eraserhead said, turning back to the villain to apply zip cuffs. This alley isn't safe. And take a different route next time. Izuku blinked, stunned. That was it? Okay. Thank you, Eraserhead, sir. Izuku turned and ran. He ran out of the alley, onto the main street, and didn't stop until he reached his apartment complex. He slammed the door behind him, sliding down to the floor, his heart trying to escape his chest. He had helped. He hadn't just watched. He had helped. Shota Aizawa sat in the staff room of UA High, a jelly pouch in his mouth. It was 8 p.m. The room was mostly empty, save for Hisashi Yamada, present Mike, who was grading English papers with headphones on. Aizawa was staring at a blank sheet of paper on his desk. He couldn't get the kid out of his head. Midoriya. In the underground, strength was secondary to information. A villain with a strong quirk who was an idiot was easy to catch. A villain with a weak quirk who was smart was a nightmare. That villain, Porcupine, was an idiot. But his defense was absolute against Aizawa's fighting style. Aizawa had been prepared to take a nasty gouge to the ribs to end that fight. He had calculated the damage as acceptable. The kid had offered a third option. A zero damage option. Hey, Shota! Hisashi yelled, sliding his headphones down. You look more brooding than usual. Did your patrol run long? Ran into a nuisance, Aizawa mumbled. A villain? A middle schooler. Hisashi blinked behind his shades. A listener gave you trouble? Did you expel him? No. Aizawa sat up, pulling a file folder from his bag. He had called Tsukachi immediately after dropping the villain off. Being a detective with connections had its perks. Getting the file on a student named Izuku Midoriya from Aldera Junior High took 10 minutes. Aizawa opened the file. Name, Midoriya Izuku. Age 13. Quirk, none. Academic record, top 5% of his year. Excellent written scores. Several disciplinary notes, for disrupting class and fantasy delusions. Aizawa frowned. Delusions? He read the teacher's comments. Midoriya insists on pursuing a hero career despite his condition. His muttering disrupts other students. He instigates conflict with other students. See, Bakugo Katsuki. Aizawa recalled the scorched uniform. The terror in the kid's eyes. The way he flinched when Aizawa moved his hand. Instigates conflict? That kid was a walking trauma response, Hisashi Aizawa said. Yeah, hypothetically. If you found a computer that could process tactical data faster than you, but it had no power cord, would you throw it away? Hisashi tilted his head. That's a weird metaphor, even for you. No. I'd buy a battery. Aizawa looked at the photo of Izuku Midoriya in the file. The kid looked plain. Boring. Weak. But the notebook. Aizawa had seen something else in that brief scan. On the back of the snatch page, there was a rush scribbling about Eraserhead. Eraserhead. Quirk, erasure. Fighting style, capturing weapons / martial arts. Weakness, dry eye. Blink duration creates a micro window of vulnerability. If engaged, use smoke or dust to force blinking. Do not rely on emitter types. Best counter, mutation types or pure physical overload. The kid had analyzed them too. And he was right. A battery, Aizawa muttered. He stood up, shoving the jelly pouch into the trash. Where are you going? Hisashi asked. It's late. I have an errand. 3 days passed. For Izuku, they were standard days. Bakugo destroyed his pencil case on Tuesday. On Wednesday, he was tripped in the hallway and laughed at. On Thursday, he sat alone at lunch, rewriting his ruined notebook into a fresh one, number 12. He was walking home, taking the long way this time. He wasn't risking the alleys again. He passed a small municipal park. It was empty, save for a stray cat and a man sitting on a swing. The man looked homeless. He was wearing all black, looking disheveled, and staring at the ground. Izuku walked past the park entrance, then stopped. He walked backward 3 steps. The man looked up. It was Eraserhead. In civilian clothes, sure, but the scarf was wrapped loosely around his neck like a fashion statement, a very bulky one, and the eyes were unmistakable. Midoriya, the hero said. Izuku dropped his backpack. Eraserhead? Sit. Aizawa kicked the empty swing next to him. Izuku scrambled over the low fence and sat on the swing, his legs trembling. What are you doing here? Is there a villain? Should I leave? No villain. Just you. Aizawa swung slightly, his feet dragging in the sand. I looked up your file. Izuku's blood ran cold. Oh, quirkless. Top grades. Teachers say you're a problem child. I don't try to be, Izuku whispered, gripping the chains of the swing. I want to be a hero. They think I'm mocking them. Are you? No. Izuku looked up, eyes fierce. I want to save people. I want to be like All Might. I want to matter. Aizawa met his gaze. The pro-hero's expression was unreadable. You can't be All Might. The words cut deep. Izuku slumped. I know that. All Might is a blunt instrument, Aizawa continued. He is a hammer that smashes problems until they stop moving. You don't have a hammer, Midoriya. Izuku stared at the ground. I know, but you have a scalpel. Izuku looked up. Huh! Aizawa reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a piece of the villain's quill from 3 days ago. Most pros would have tried to punch through that guy. Most pros would have gotten hurt. You dismantled him with 2 sentences. Aizawa tossed the quill into the sand. The hero industry is oversaturated with heavy hitters. People who blow up buildings to save a cat. It's inefficient. It's illogical. Aizawa leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You have an analytical mind. You see things others miss. That is a weapon. But right now, Aizawa looked Izuku up and down. You're a liability. If you walked into a fight today, you would die. Your body is weak. Your reflexes are untrained. You freeze under pressure. Izuku wanted to argue, but he couldn't. It was the truth. So, here is the question, Aizawa said, his voice dropping an octave. Do you want to be a hero who smiles and waves and dies in his first week? Or do you want to be a hero who survives? Izuku's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. I want to survive. I want to save everyone I can, even from the shadows? Aizawa asked. No glory. No merchandise. Just the work. I don't care about the fame, Izuku said, and for the first time in his life, he realized how true that was. He didn't want the camera crews. He just wanted to stop the bad things from happening. He wanted to be useful. Aizawa stood up. He loomed over the sitting boy. UA High has a hero course. Everyone aims for it. But the entrance exam is biased toward combat quirks. Robots. Flashy destruction. Izuku nodded miserably. He knew the stats. Quirkless applicants had a 0% acceptance rate. However, Aizawa said, a terrifying grin spreading across his face. A rictus of teeth that promised pain. I am a teacher at UA. And I have the authority to recommend a student for special tutelage. Izuku stopped breathing. Meet me at Dagoba Municipal Beach Park tomorrow morning at 0500 hours, Aizawa said. Don't eat breakfast. You'll just throw it up. Wait, Izuku scrambled off the swing. Are you saying you're going to train me? Aizawa turned, his hands in his pockets. I'm saying I'm going to break you down, and see if there's anything worth building back up. It won't be fun. It won't be fair. It will be logical. He looked back over his shoulder. Don't be late, problem child. Aizawa walked away, fading into the evening shadows. Izuku stood in the middle of the park. The wind rustled the leaves. The tears finally spilled over, but they weren't tears of despair this time. He wiped them away with his sleeve, a grin stretching across his face that hurt his cheeks. He looked at his hand. He clenched it into a fist. A scalpel, he thought. He grabbed his backpack and started running home. He had to prepare. He had to read every note he had on Eraserhead. He had to be ready. For the first time in his life, someone hadn't looked at him and seen a quirkless nobody. They had seen a weapon, and Izuku was going to make sure he was the sharpest one in the arsenal. Scene break. The next morning, Dagoba Municipal Beach was a dump. Literally. Decades of ocean currents and illegal dumping had turned the pristine coastline into a mountain range of trash. Tires, refrigerators, broken cars, It was a graveyard of human consumption. The sun was just beginning to bleed purple light over the horizon. The air was cold and smelled of rust and salt. Izuku stood at the entrance, wearing a green tracksuit that was slightly too big for him. He checked his watch. 4:58. At 4:59, a figure dropped from the top of a pile of refrigerators. Aizawa landed silently in the sand. He was wearing his hero costume, goggles around his neck. "You're early," Aizawa said. "Good. Good morning, Eraserhead-sensei." Izuku bowed. "Drop the honorifics. Call me sensei or Aizawa. I don't care." Aizawa gestured to the mountain of trash. "This place is an eyesore. It's also a hazard. The unstable terrain makes it perfect for balance training. Are we cleaning it?" Izuku asked, hopeful. "Eventually. But not today." Aizawa pulled a roll of gray material from his belt. It looked like his capture weapon, but thinner. "This is carbon fiber weave tape. It's not the alloy wire I use, but it's durable." He tossed the roll to Izuku. "Capture tape?" Izuku asked, examining it. "Your analysis is good," Aizawa said, walking toward a rusty pickup truck half buried in the sand. "But analysis takes time. In a fight, you don't have time. You need to buy it. You need to control the environment." Aizawa tapped his temple. "You can't punch a villain through a wall. So you have to make sure he can't hit you. You have to bind him, trip him, blind him. You have to fight dirty." Izuku nodded, his face serious. "Logical deception." "Exactly." Aizawa pointed to the truck. "Your goal today is simple. I am going to stand on this truck. You are going to try to wrap that tape around my wrist. Just one loop." Izuku looked at the tape, then at the pro hero. "That sounds doable." Aizawa smiled that scary smile again. "I'm allowed to fight back." 2 hours later, Izuku lay face down in the sand. He was covered in bruises. His mouth tasted like sand. His arms felt like jelly. He had not touched Aizawa's wrist. He hadn't even come close. Every time he got within 5 feet, Aizawa would sweep his legs, throw sand in his eyes, or simply step out of the way with frustrating ease. "Get up," Aizawa said. He wasn't even sweating. Izuku groaned, pushing himself up. His legs shook. "Why are you attacking me head-on?" Aizawa asked, sounding bored. "I told you yesterday. You aren't All Might." I have to get close to use the tape," Izuku wheezed. "So you run in a straight line?" "Predictable." Aizawa kicked a tire next to him. "Use the trash. Use the terrain. If you can't outspeed me, outthink me." Izuku wiped his face. He looked around. The beach was a maze of junk. "Outthink him." Izuku grabbed the tape. He didn't charge this time. He ran to the left, scrambling up a pile of old washing machines. Aizawa watched him, his hands in his pockets. Izuku disappeared behind a wall of scrap metal. Aizawa waited. He listened. Silence. Aizawa smirked. "He's learning." Suddenly, a tire came rolling out from the right side of the pile, heading straight for Aizawa. Aizawa stepped aside lazily. Distraction? Basic. But as he stepped, his foot snagged on something. A thin line of tape, strung ankle-height between 2 car bumpers, buried under a light layer of sand. Aizawa looked down. When did he? In that split second of distraction, Izuku didn't come from the front. He dropped from above. He had climbed the pile, thrown the tire, and timed his jump. He plummeted toward Aizawa, loop of tape ready. Aizawa reacted instantly, his scarf shooting up to catch the boy. He grabbed Izuku midair and swung him away, tossing him into a pile of cardboard boxes. Thump. Better, Aizawa called out. Izuku crawled out of the boxes, spitting out packing peanuts. He was grinning. "I made you look," Izuku said. Aizawa looked at his ankle. The tape had grazed his boot. It wasn't a capture, but it was contact. Aizawa pulled a jelly pouch from his belt and tossed it to Izuku. "Refuel," Aizawa commanded. "Then we go again." Izuku caught the pouch. "Yes, sensei." As Izuku sucked down the nutrients, Aizawa turned away to hide a small smile. The kid had no muscle. His form was atrocious. He telegraphed his moves, but he had the instinct. He had the hunger. Bakugo Katsuki was wrong, Aizawa thought. He's not a pebble. He's a jagged piece of glass. And with enough pressure, glass can cut through anything. Midoriya, Aizawa said. Yes? 2 years, Aizawa said. We have 2 years before the UA entrance exam. By the time we're done, you won't just pass. You're going to be the nightmare of every villain who thinks they're safe because they don't see a hero coming. Izuku stood up, dusting off the sand. His eyes burned with green fire. I'm ready. Logic suggests otherwise, Aizawa said, dropping into a combat stance. Prove me wrong. Izuku charged. The transformation of a human body is a matter of simple physics. Energy in, energy out. Stress applied to muscle fibers creates micro tears. Rest and nutrition repair them, making them denser, stronger. It is a biological equation. The transformation of a human mind, however, is not simple. It is violent. For Izuku Midoriya, the death of his old self didn't happen in a single moment. It happened in the gray hours before dawn, amidst the stench of rotting garbage and sea salt, under the indifferent gaze of a man who believed in nothing but logic. Phase 1, the breaking month 2, again. The word was a flat stone skipping across the surface of Izuku's exhaustion. Izuku lay face down in the sand of Dagoba Beach. His lungs burned as if he had inhaled broken glass. His arms, wrapped in heavy bandages, trembled uncontrollably. I said again. Aizawa's voice drifted down from atop a pile of rusted washing machines. Izuku gritted his teeth. He pushed his hands into the shifting sand. It offered no purchase, slipping away under his weight, forcing him to engage his core, his legs, every stabilizing muscle he possessed just to rise to a push-up position. He was wearing them. The weights. Aizawa called them training inhibitors. Izuku called them hell cuffs. 3 kilograms on each wrist. 5 on each ankle. A weighted vest adding another 10. For a 14-year-old boy who had spent his life behind a desk, it was crushing. Target acquisition, Aizawa barked. Izuku snapped his head up. Aizawa held a tennis ball. Reaction time is the difference between a bruise and a closed casket. Go. Aizawa threw the ball. It wasn't a gentle toss. It was a fastball, aimed directly at Izuku's forehead. Izuku tried to dodge. His brain sent the signal, shift weight to the left, pivot on the right knee. But his body, laden with the artificial weight and exhausted from 2 hours of conditioning, lagged. Thwack. The ball hit him square in the forehead. Izuku fell back into the sand, stars dancing in his vision. Too slow, Aizawa said, jumping down. He didn't offer a hand to help Izuku up. He offered a jelly pouch. Your processing speed is fine. Your hardware is lagging. You saw the ball coming, but your body couldn't execute the command. Izuku tore open the pouch with his teeth, sucking down the nutrient gel. It tasted like green apple and chalk. I know, sensei. The inertia of the weights. It throws off my center of gravity. Then find a new center, Aizawa said, adjusting his capture scarf. Villains won't fight you in a dojo, Midoriya. They will fight you when you're sick. When you're injured. When you're carrying a civilian. These weights aren't just for muscle. They are to simulate the burden of the job. Being a hero is heavy. Aizawa walked to the shoreline, looking out at the dark ocean. You analyze heroes, Aizawa said without turning. Tell me about Eraserhead. Izuku wiped the sweat from his eyes. Eraserhead. Underground hero. Specializes in ambush tactics and quirk nullification. High proficiency in capture weaponry and mixed martial arts. Weaknesses: dry eye syndrome, long-range emitters, and sustained combat against multiple heteromorphic types. Correct. Now, tell me how I survived for 15 years with those weaknesses. Izuku paused. He thought about the fight in the alley. He thought about the videos he had managed to find on the deep web. Grainy security footage of Aizawa taking down gangs. You don't fight fair, Izuku said softly. Aizawa turned, a terrifying grin splitting his face. Exactly. I cheat. I lie. I use the environment. I use fear. If I am fighting a fair fight, I have already made a tactical error. He pointed a finger at Izuku. You are quirkless. By societal standards, you are the ultimate underdog. If you fight fair, you lose. If you fight with honor, you die. I am not teaching you to be a symbol of peace, Midoriya. I am teaching you to be a ghost. A glitch in the system. When a villain looks at you, they should see a helpless child. By the time they realize their mistake, they should already be in cuffs. Aizawa tossed another tennis ball. This time, Izuku didn't try to dodge with his whole body. He simply tilted his head to the side, the ball whizzing past his ear. Good, Aizawa muttered. Now, run the obstacle course. Backwards. Phase 2, The Ghost in the Machine Month 8. The physical training was hell, but it was the mental conditioning that began to frighten Inko Midoriya. Her son had always been quiet, but he had been an anxious quiet. A mutter storm of nervous energy. Now he was still. He would sit at the dinner table, eating his fish with mechanical precision. His eyes would scan the room, lingering on the structural supports, the window latches, the exits. When she dropped a plate in the kitchen, he didn't jump. He was at her side before the porcelain hit the floor, catching it midair with a blur of movement that made her dizzy. Izuku, honey, she asked one evening, how is the martial arts class going? Izuku looked up. His eyes were dark green. There were bags under them, but his gaze was sharp. It's efficient, Mom. I'm learning a lot. You're always so tired. I have to be, he said simply. Efficiency requires calibration. He went to his room after dinner. But he didn't sleep. The glow of his computer monitors illuminated the walls, covered not in All Might posters. Those had been taken down, rolled up, and stored in the closet, but in maps. Maps of Muzurifu. Maps of criminal hotspots. Diagrams of quirk physiology. Izuku sat in his ergonomic chair, wearing his yellow headphones. He cracked his knuckles and logged into the Tor browser. He navigated to a nondescript forum with a black background and simple green text. The Tartarus Vault. It was a hub for underground heroes, vigilantes though they weren't officially welcomed, and freelance analysts. It was invite only. Aizawa had given him the invite code 6 months ago with a simple instruction: watch. Learn. Contribute if you're sure. If you're wrong, you're banned. Username Dikairu. The name was a play on his nickname. Deku meant useless. Dikairu meant I can do it. He scrolled through the threads. User, Rocklock. Subject, lockpicking quirk suspect in Shibuya district. Details, suspect bypassing biometric scanners. No forced entry. Cameras show static for 3.5 seconds during entry. Izuku pulled up a separate window, accessing a database of quirk registries he had borrowed access to. He typed rapidly. User Dikairu. Reply. Check the local sewage grid maintenance logs. There is a minor villain named Static Skin registered in Shiba who was released on parole 3 months ago. His quirk allows him to conduct bioelectricity through moisture. If the humidity in Shibuya is high, which it is, 88% tonight, he could short-circuit the biometric loop by touching the keypad with damp fingers. The static on the camera matches his electromagnetic discharge signature. User, Rocklock. Reply checking. 10 minutes passed. Izuku reviewed his homework. Quadratic equations. Simple. Boring. A notification pinged. User, Rocklock. Reply got him. He was hiding in a storm drain 2 blocks over. Nice catch, Dikairu. Who's your agency? User, Dikairu. Reply, independent contractor. Izuku allowed himself a small, dry smile. He wasn't just learning to fight. He was learning the language of the underworld. He learned that heroes were frustrated, tired, and often underfunded. He learned that the flashy battles on TV were 1% of the job. The other 99% was paperwork, surveillance, and information brokerage. He clicked on a private message from a user named Sir_N. User, Sir_N. Message: your analysis on the trigger distribution routes in Naruhodo was astute. You predicted the shift to the dockyards before the police did. Your logic relies heavily on probability, yet you account for human error. Why? Izuku hesitated. Sir Knight I. It had to be. The typing style, the focus on foresight and prediction. User Dikairu. Reply, probability is math. Humans are variables. Villains are desperate. Desperation makes people irrational. If you only look at the logical path, you miss the desperate path. I plan for the mistake, not the perfection. User, Sir_N. Reply, interesting. Keep watching. Izuku logged off. He rubbed his temples. His brain felt like it was constantly revving, an engine that never idled. He looked at his hand. He flexed it. The skin was rougher now, calloused from the rope climbing, the sand dragging, the capture tape drills. He wasn't a hero yet. But he was something. He was a resource. Phase 3, the mask, month 14. Aldera Junior High was a cesspool. Izuku walked through the halls, his backpack heavy with textbooks and his hidden ankle weights. The chatter of the students washed over him like white noise. Look, it's Deku, still walking around like a zombie. I heard he tries to talk to himself in the bathroom. Izuku didn't react. He didn't flinch. He walked with a steady, rhythmic gait. Heel to toe. Check the corners. Exits clear. He entered the classroom and sat at his desk. Katsuki Bakugo sat 3 rows ahead, feet on the desk. He was glaring at Izuku. He had been glaring at Izuku for months. Bakugo was confused. And confusion, for Bakugo, quickly transmuted into rage. For years, the dynamic had been simple. Bakugo was the sun, Izuku was the shadow. Bakugo exploded, Izuku cowered. It was the natural order, but the order was broken. Izuku didn't stutter anymore. He barely spoke at all. When Bakugo threatened him, Izuku would just look at him. Not with defiance, which Bakugo could crush, but with assessment. It made Bakugo's skin crawl. It felt like he was being dissected. Bakugo kicked Izuku's desk as he walked past. Izuku didn't jump. He didn't even look up from his book. He just shifted his pencil case slightly to the left, preventing it from sliding off the edge. I'm talking to you, damn nerd! Bakugo slammed his hand down. Boom! A small explosion scorched the wood. The class went silent. The teacher, Mr. Yamato, sighed but didn't intervene. Settle down, Bakugo. Izuku slowly closed his book. He looked up. His green eyes were flat, devoid of the fear that used to feed Bakugo's ego. Class is starting in 2 minutes, Bakugo, Izuku said. His voice was calm, monotone. You should sit down. Don't tell me what to do. Bakugo grabbed Izuku's collar. You think you're better than me? Just because you stopped crying? You're still a quirkless defect. Izuku looked at Bakugo's hand on his collar. He analyzed the grip. Thumb placement is weak. Center of gravity is forward. Left flank is open. In his mind, Izuku saw 3 ways to disable Bakugo instantly. 1. Throat strike. Collapse the trachea. 80% chance of hospitalization. 2. Aggressive. 2. Joint lock. Twist the wrist, force the elbow hyperextension. 50% chance of fracture. 3. Pressure point. The radial nerve cluster. Izuku's hand twitched. He wanted to do it. The instinct Aizawa had drilled into him, neutralized the threat, screamed at him to act. But this wasn't an alley. This was a classroom. And Aizawa had also taught him something else, deception. You're wrinkling my uniform, Izuku said. Bakugo blinked. The sheer banality of the statement threw him off. Ha! My mom ironed this. Please let go. Bakugo shoveled him back into the chair. Freak. Bakugo stalked off to his seat. Izuku straightened his collar. He felt the eyes of the class on him. They weren't mocking him anymore. They were unsettled. Izuku opened his book again. Under the desk, his hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from the restraint it took not to fight back. Control, he told himself. Emotion is a variable. Remove it. Phase 4, the capture month 16. The rainy season had turned the beach into a mud pit. Aizawa stood in the center of a clearing made of cleared debris. He wasn't holding back anymore. Capture tape proficiency test, Aizawa announced. Level 4. Izuku stood 20 meters away. He held the carbon fiber tape in both hands. He was taller now. The baby fat was gone, replaced by lean, corded muscle. He stood with a slouch, mimicking his teacher, his knees bent, ready to spring. Begin. Aizawa moved. He was a blur. Izuku didn't run. He flicked his wrists. 2 strands of tape shot out, aiming not for Aizawa, but for the piles of trash on either side of him. The tape adhered to the metal. Izuku yanked, launching himself into the air like a slingshot. Airborne. Risky, Aizawa commented, leaping up to intercept. Aizawa's capture weapon lashed out, aiming to wrap Izuku's leg. Izuku twisted in midair. He reached into his belt and pulled out a small, spherical object. A flashbang. He dropped it. Bang! A blinding white light engulfed the space between them. Aizawa didn't blink. He had his goggles. But the flashbang wasn't for his eyes. It was for the sound. The acoustic bang in the enclosed valley of trash echoed violently. Aizawa flinched. His equilibrium momentarily rattled. In that half-second, Izuku landed. He didn't land away from Aizawa. He landed inside Aizawa's guard. Izuku dropped low, sweeping his leg to kick sand into Aizawa's face, a dirty trick he'd learned in month 4. As Aizawa raised an arm to block the debris, Izuku lunged. He wrapped the tape around Aizawa's raised forearm, looped it under the armpit, and used his own body weight to leverage the hero down. Aizawa resisted. He was stronger. Much stronger. He planted his feet and prepared to throw Izuku off, but Izuku let go. He released the tension abruptly. Aizawa, bracing against a pull that was no longer there, stumbled backward. Izuku used the momentum. He spun, reapplying the tape to Aizawa's ankles. He pulled tight. Aizawa hit the mud. Silence. Izuku stood over his teacher, panting, the end of the tape clutched in his hand. Aizawa was on his back, his ankles bound. Aizawa stared up at the gray sky. Then he sat up. You used a flashbang. You said use the environment, Izuku rasped. Sound is part of the environment. You kicked mud in my eyes. Visual impairment tactic. You feinted a grapple to compromise my balance. Judo principle. Serioka Zenio. Aizawa looked at the bindings on his ankles. They were tight. Professional. It took you 16 months to put me on the ground once, Aizawa said. He ripped the tape apart with sheer brute strength, showing that he could have escaped at any moment, and stood up. I went easy on you, Aizawa lied. Izuku smiled weakly. I know, but Aizawa adjusted his goggles. You passed. Level 4 complete. He walked past Izuku, patting him on the shoulder. It was a heavy, firm pat. You're not a liability anymore, Midoriya. You're a hazard. Izuku beamed. It was the highest compliment he could have received. Phase 5, the climax month 18 graduation week, the final week of middle school. The air was thick with the scent of cherry blossoms and anxiety. Izuku was cleaning out his locker. He removed the weights from his wrists and ankles, placing them in his bag. He felt light. Like he could jump over the school building. He had applied to UA. He had taken the written mock exams and scored in the top 0.1% nationally. He was ready. Deku. The voice came from behind him. It wasn't the usual shouting. It was quiet. Simmering. Izuku closed his locker and turned. Katsuki Bakugo stood there. But he wasn't alone. His lackeys were gone. It was just him. We need to talk, Bakugo said. I'm going home, Katsuki, Izuku said, using the given name. It felt strange in his mouth, but Kaken felt like a name for a friend, and they weren't friends. They weren't enemies. They were strangers with a history. Don't ignore me. Bakugo stepped forward, sparks popping in his palms. You applied to UA. The hero course. Yes. I told you not to. I don't take orders from you. Bakugo's eyes widened. The defiance was blatant now. You think you're tough? You think because you worked out a little, you can stand on the same stage as me? As All Might? I'm not trying to be All Might, Izuku said calmly. I'm just trying to be a hero. You're a pebble. Bakugo screamed, his composure cracking. You're nothing. You're quirkless. You're supposed to be beneath me. He swung. It was a right hook. Telegraphed. Emotional. Sloppy. To the old Izuku, it would have been a terrifying explosion of pain. To the new Izuku, trained by Eraserhead, honed by months of combat drills against a man who moved faster than the eye could see, it was slow. Izuku didn't think. He didn't analyze. His body just moved. He stepped inside the arc of the swing. His left hand shot up, catching Bakugo's wrist. He didn't stop the momentum, he guided it. Izuku pivoted on his left foot, turning his back to Bakugo's chest. He pulled the arm down and across, loading Bakugo's weight onto his hips. Suinage. Shoulder throw. With a sharp exhale, Izuku straightened his legs and bowed forward. The world flipped for Katsuki Bakugo. His feet left the ground. He flew through the air, the ceiling and floor swapping places. Slam! Bakugo hit the linoleum floor of the hallway hard. The wind was knocked out of him. He lay there, staring up at the fluorescent lights, his brain unable to process what had just happened. He had been thrown by Deku. Izuku stood over him. He hadn't used his full strength. If he had, on the concrete floor, he might have broken Bakugo's ribs. He had controlled the fall. Bakugo gasped for air, scrambling to sit up. He looked at Izuku with pure shock. Not anger. Shock. You. Bakugo wheezed. You have a quirk? No, Izuku said. He picked up his bag. He looked down at the boy who had tormented him for 10 years. He looked at the smoking palms, the angry eyes, the trembling pride. And suddenly Izuku felt bored. The rivalry felt small. Bakugo felt small. I learned how to fight, Katsuki, Izuku said quietly. You rely too much on your quirk. Your right hook leaves your ribs wide open. Your stance is too wide. If you fight a real villain like that, you'll die. Izuku turned his back. You looked down on me for so long, you forgot to look at your own feet. DKU. Bakugo screamed, scrambling to his feet, an explosion ready in his hand. Fight me. Izuku didn't turn around. He just kept walking. I'm done fighting you, Izuku called back. I have real work to do. He walked out of the school, into the sunlight. He didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel happy. He just felt ready. Epilogue, the lead weights drop. That night, Izuku sat on the beach with Aizawa. The sun was setting. I threw him, Izuku said, staring at the ocean. Bakugo? Aizawa asked. Yeah. Did he deserve it? Yes. But I didn't do it to hurt him. I did it because he was in my way. Aizawa nodded. Good. Emotion clouds judgment. Action should be dictated by necessity. Aizawa reached into his pocket and pulled out a new item. It wasn't a jelly pouch. It was a UA High recommendation form. The entrance exam is in 2 weeks, Aizawa said. I've signed this. You're taking the recommendation exam. Wait, Izuku blinked. But I'm quirkless. The recommendation exam is for elites. Todoroki. Yaoyorozu. People with powerful quirks. And you, Aizawa said? The exam has a written portion and a practical. The practical involves an obstacle race and a combat test. Aizawa stood up. You've been training with lead weights for 2 years, Midoriya. Physical ones? And mental ones? You've been carrying the weight of being useless. Of being weak. Aizawa placed a hand on Izuku's head. He ruffled the green curls. It's time to take them off. Izuku looked at the form. Recommended by Shota Aizawa. He felt a lump in his throat. He swallowed it down. Yes, sensei. Go home. Rest. For the next 2 weeks, we do light conditioning only. And study. I don't want you to just pass the written exam. I want you to destroy it. I will. I know. Aizawa walked away, his capture scarf trailing in the wind. Izuku stayed on the beach for a moment longer. He looked at his hands. They were scarred. Calloused. Strong. He took a deep breath of the salty air. Somewhere in the city, a sludge villain was moving through the sewers, looking for a victim. Somewhere, All Might was reaching his limit. Somewhere, the gears of fate were turning. But Izuku Midoriya wasn't waiting for fate anymore. He had a map. He had a plan. And he had a weapon. He picked up his bag and walked into the darkness, not as a victim, but as a hunter. The sewers of Muzidafu were a labyrinth of neglect. To the average citizen, they were out of sight, out of mind, a dark infrastructure that carried away the city's waste. To a villain on the run, they were a highway. To Izuku Midoriya, walking home under the midday sun, the manhole cover rattling 20 meters ahead was a variable. Rattle. Clank. Izuku stopped. He was 10 months into his training with Eraserhead. His body was no longer the soft, doughy thing that had flinched at loud noises. Under his Gakurin uniform, his muscles were coiled wire. He wore wrist weights that hummed with a dull, familiar ache. He scanned the street. Empty. The tunnel under the overpass provided shade, but it also created a visual choke point. Aizawa-sensei's Rule 4, if the path ahead has limited visibility, and you hear an anomaly, assume hostility. Izuku didn't step into the tunnel. He shifted his backpack to his left shoulder, his non-dominant side, freeing his right hand. He reached into his pocket, his fingers brushing the cold metal of a tactical pen Aizawa had given him for his birthday. It wasn't a weapon, technically. It was a writing implement made of hardened aircraft aluminum with a carbide tip. Just a rat, Izuku whispered to himself, trying to lower his heart rate. Or maintenance. He took a step forward. The manhole cover didn't just rattle, it exploded upwards. A geyser of sickly green fluid erupted from the darkness. It didn't splash, it coalesced. It formed a towering, undulating mass of slime with two bulging, frantic eyes and a gaping maw of yellow teeth. A medium-sized skin suit. The villain gurgled, his voice sounding like a drain backing up. You'll do. You'll do nicely, the villain lunged. In the old timeline, the one where Izuku was just a fanboy, he would have frozen. He would have screamed. In this timeline, Izuku dropped his center of gravity. Fluid body, his mind raced, the world slowing down into analytical freeze frames. No solid mass to strike. Blunt force is useless. He's trying to engulf me. The sludge crashed down. Izuku didn't run away. He couldn't outrun a liquid projection. Instead, he pivoted. He held his breath, a reflex drilled into him by Aizawa holding his head underwater at the beach. If you panic, you inhale water. If you calculate, you hold out for 45 seconds. The slime hit him. It was cold, smelling of rot and old grease. It wrapped around his ankles, surging up his legs, trying to force its way into his nose and mouth. He's entering the airway, Izuku analyzed, even as the panic screamed in his hindbrain. He needs a host to hide from the pursuer. The villain laughed. Don't struggle, kid. It'll only hurt for a minute. I just need to hide inside you. Izuku clamped his mouth shut. The slime pressed against his lips, burning like acid. He felt the villain's physical body, the fluid, trying to pry his jaw open. Fluid dynamics. He's viscous, but he has surface tension. Weak point? Eyes. The only solid part. Izuku's right arm was pinned, but he had shifted his backpack earlier. The strap gave him a centimeter of wiggle room. He twisted his hip, using the leverage of the ground to rip his arm free from the semi-solid muck. He gripped the tactical pen. Stop squirming! The villain roared, a tendril of slime whipping toward Izuku's neck. Izuku didn't slash wildly. He thrust the pen with surgical precision, aiming for the left eye which was floating near his shoulder. Strike! The carbide tip sank into the gelatinous film protecting the eye. Arg! The villain shrieked. The fluid recoiled, the pressure around Izuku's mouth loosening for a fraction of a second. Izuku gasped, sucking in a lungful of air before the sludge tightened again. He had bought himself 30 seconds. He's distracted. Pain response causing retraction. He's shifting density to protect the eye. Izuku didn't stop. He kicked backward, driving his heel into what he hoped was a sensitive mass of nerve endings. He wasn't winning. He knew he couldn't win this alone. He was a 14-year-old fighting a mutation quirk that made physical damage nearly impossible. But I don't have to win, Izuku thought, his vision blurring as the oxygen deprivation set in. I just have to survive until the variable arrives. The villain is running. Who is he running from? The manhole cover clattered again. I am here. The voice boomed through the tunnel, echoing off the concrete walls with enough force to rattle Izuku's teeth. The sludge villain froze. No. Not him. Izuku, one eye covered in slime, looked toward the light. A figure stood there. A mountain of muscle. A blonde giant wearing a white t-shirt and cargo pants, shading the sun like a colossus. All Might. The hero. The symbol. Izuku's analyst brain noted the stiff posture of the hero. He's not smiling as wide as usual. He's hunched. Time limit? All Might didn't waste time with speeches. He pulled back a fist. The air pressure in the tunnel dropped. Texas. Smash! The punch didn't connect with the villain physically. It connected with the air. A shockwave of compressed wind blasted through the tunnel. The physics were undeniable. The wind pressure acted like a solid wall, hitting the fluid villain with the force of a hurricane. The sludge lost its cohesion. It splattered against the walls, ripped away from Izuku's body by sheer aerodynamic drag. Izuku fell to his knees, coughing up traces of bile and slime. The villain was reduced to puddles, his eyes swirling dizzily in a small mound of goo. All Might stood tall, steam rising from his body. He marched over to the scattered remains, scooping them up into empty soda bottles with blinding speed. "Are you all right, young man?" All Might asked, his voice booming. "I apologize for getting you caught up in my justice ing," Izuku wheezed, wiping his mouth. He looked up. His eyes were watering, but he forced himself to focus. Izuku coughed. "I targeted the eye." "Did it cause permanent damage?" All Might blinked. Usually, kids screamed, cried, or asked for an autograph. They didn't ask about collateral damage to the villain. "He will be fine." All Might gave a thumbs up, though he seemed in a rush. "Just a sore optic nerve." "You fought back?" "Brave. Very brave." All Might finished bottling the villain. He capped the soda bottles and shoved them into his pocket. "Well, I must be off. Evil never sleeps, and neither does the commute." All Might crouched, preparing to jump. "Wait," Izuku thought. "He's leaving too fast. He's steaming." There's blood on the corner of his mouth. Izuku's notebook, number 13 now, water-resistant paper, was in his bag. He wanted an autograph. But more than that, his instincts were screaming, "Something is wrong with the symbol of peace." "Wait!" Izuku yelled. All Might launched himself into the sky. Izuku didn't think. He didn't weigh the pros and cons. He just moved. He grabbed onto All Might's leg. "Hey! Heavy!" All Might shouted as they ascended rapidly. "Let go! I love my fans, but this is too much. If I let go now, I'll die." Izuku shouted back, his face flapping in the wind. "Kinetic energy. Terminal velocity. Splat. Ah. Good point." They landed on a rooftop a few blocks away. Izuku collapsed, his legs shaking. The adrenaline from the attack and the flight was crashing, leaving him trembling. "That was reckless," All Might chastised, checking his pockets to ensure the villain was secure. "You could have been killed." I know," Izuku panted. He stood up, straightening his uniform. "I analyzed the grip strength needed. I knew I could hold on." All Might sighed. "Well, I really must go." "All Might," Izuku said, his voice cutting through the wind. "Wait." The hero stopped. "You're hurt," Izuku said. It wasn't a question. All Might stiffened. "I am fine." "I am." Poof. Smoke exploded. The muscular giant vanished. In his place stood a skeletal man with sunken eyes, coughing up blood. Izuku didn't scream. He didn't gasp in horror. He took a step back, his eyes narrowing, his mind instantly processing the data. Mass displacement? No, that violates thermodynamics. It's a form contraction. Like a flexed muscle relaxing, but extreme. The steam, heat dissipation from the rapid metabolic shift. An imposter? Izuku whispered. No. The eyes are the same. The voice modulation is similar. "I am All Might," the skeletal man wheezed, wiping blood from his chin. He sat down heavily on a ventilation unit. "You're not screaming." "I've seen weirder quirks," Izuku lied. He hadn't. But he had seen Aizawa look like a zombie after a 48-hour patrol. "You're emaciated. Is it a curse? A poison?" All Might looked at the boy. This kid was strange. Green hair, intense eyes, and a calmness that felt practiced, almost brittle. An injury, All Might admitted. He lifted his shirt. Izuku hissed. The scar was a crater. The respiratory system was decimated. 5 years ago, All Might said. "Toxic chainsaw?" Izuku asked instantly. "You know your stuff." But no. This was a fight the public doesn't know about. All Might dropped his shirt. "I can only do hero work for about 3 hours a day. The rest of the time, I look like this." Izuku processed this. The symbol of peace was dying. The pillar holding up society was cracked. "Why are you telling me?" Izuku asked. "Because you saw me," All Might said simply. "And because you have a serious look in your eyes." Izuku gripped his notebook. This was it. The moment of truth. All Might, Izuku said. I have no quirk. All Might's expression softened into something sad. I see. I've been told my whole life to give up, Izuku continued. My mother apologized to me. My classmates beat me up. The doctors told me to be realistic. He looked at his hands, scarred from the rope climbs at Dagoba Beach. But 2 years ago, a pro hero told me I had a weapon. He told me I could fight. He's been training me. All Might raised an eyebrow. A pro hero? Eraserhead, Izuku said. All Might choked on a cough. Aizawa? You're Aizawa's kid? Student, Izuku corrected. He taught me logic. He taught me that quirks are just tools, and tools can be broken. Izuku looked All Might in the eye. Can I be a hero without a quirk? Not a symbol. Not a god. But a hero who saves people? All Might looked at the boy. He thought about the dangers. He thought about the villain he had just bottled. He thought about the hole in his own stomach. Pros are always risking their lives, All Might said quietly. Without power, can you save others? Aizawa is a specialist. He erases quirks to level the playing field. Without that, you are fighting guns with a stick. Izuku flinched. I cannot in good conscience tell you it is safe, All Might said. If you want to help people, being a police officer is a noble profession. It's not flashy. But it's vital. The word stung. Even with Aizawa's training, hearing it from All Might hurt. I see, Izuku said. He bowed low. Thank you for your honesty. And, your secret is safe with me. Logically, revealing it would cause societal collapse. All Might blinked at the cold assessment. Right. Thank you. All Might stood up and walked to the stairwell door. He paused. You have spirit, kid. Aizawa doesn't waste his time on hopeless cases. Maybe you can prove me wrong. He left. Izuku stood on the roof alone. The wind whipped his hair. Prove you wrong, Izuku muttered. He tightened his fists. I intend to. The explosion. Izuku didn't go straight home. He needed to walk. He needed to analyze the interaction. All Might was a pragmatist disguised as an idealist. Aizawa was an idealist disguised as a pragmatist. Boom! The ground shook. A pillar of black smoke rose into the sky from the Tatooine shopping district. Proximity, 2 blocks. Smoke density suggests chemical fire. Explosions suggest. Izuku ran. Not to watch, but to assess. When he arrived at the intersection, it was chaos. The police had established a perimeter, but the crowd was pushing forward. Izuku wove through the legs of the bystanders, slipping to the front line like a ghost. His eyes widened. The alleyway was an inferno. The sludge villain was there. He had escaped. The bottles, Izuku realized, his stomach dropping. I grabbed All Might's leg. He must have dropped them. This is my fault. But the villain wasn't alone. He had a hostage. Explosions ripped through the slime. Golden, violent explosions. Bakugo. The villain had found a better suit. Bakugo's explosion quirk was creating a barrier of fire, keeping the heroes at bay, but it was also suffocating him. Izuku scanned the heroes. Death arms. Strength quirk. Useless against fluids. He was punching the ground in frustration. Kamui Woods. Wood quirk. Highly flammable. He was rescuing civilians, staying back from the fire. Empty lady. Gigantification. The street was too narrow. She couldn't enter without crushing the buildings. Backdraft. Water quirk. He was fighting the fires, but he couldn't hit the villain without risking drowning the hostage. They're stuck, Izuku realized. They are waiting for a specialist. They are waiting for a quirk that matches the situation. But Bakugo didn't have time. Izuku watched the sludge cover Bakugo's nose. He saw the terror in Bakugo's eyes, a look he had never seen before. The look of a victim. The crowd was screaming. Where is All Might? Why aren't they doing anything? Izuku's breath hitched. Aizawa Rule 1. When the pros are stalled, look for the variable they missed. Izuku looked at the environment. Fire. Sludge. Explosions. Wind. He looked at a vending machine stand near the perimeter. Next to it, a red metal cylinder. A commercial fire extinguisher. He looked at his backpack. Heavy with textbooks. Izuku didn't think about dying. He didn't think about being quirkless. He thought about the solution. Step 1, disorient. Step 2, neutralize the state of matter. Step 3, extract. Izuku ducked under the police tape. Hey! Kid! Get back! Death Arms shouted. Izuku ignored him. He didn't run screaming. He sprinted with the low, predatory dash Aizawa had taught him. He reached the fire extinguisher. He grabbed it, ripping the safety pin out with a practice motion. He ran toward the flames. The sludge villain saw him. You again! I'll kill you this time. The villain raised a massive, sludge tentacle to smash the boy. Izuku didn't stop. He swung his backpack by one strap. He used the rotational momentum to hurl it. It wasn't a random throw. He aimed for the eyes. Thwack! The bag hit the villain's right eye, the same one Izuku had stabbed earlier. The villain recoiled, shrieking. My eye! The tentacle missed Izuku, smashing into the pavement. Izuku slid on his knees, coming to a stop 3 meters from the villain. The heat was blistering. Kaken! Izuku yelled. Bakugo's eyes found him. Deku? Izuku raised the fire extinguisher. He didn't aim at the fire. He aimed at the sludge surrounding Bakugo's mouth. Sludge is a colloid. High viscosity. If I lower the temperature rapidly, it hardens. CO2 discharge. Izuku screamed. He squeezed the trigger. A blast of freezing white foam and gas erupted. It hit the sludge. The sudden drop in temperature caused the fluid to stiffen, turning from goo to a crusty semi-solid. The grip on Bakugo's mouth loosened. The explosion stopped for a second as the nitroglycerin sweat froze. Inhale! Izuku commanded. Bakugo gasped, sucking in air. You brat! The villain shook off the foam, the sludge cracking but reforming. He raised a massive arm to crush them both. Izuku dropped the empty extinguisher. He had no weapon. He stood in front of Bakugo, raising his arms in a defensive guard, knowing it wouldn't be enough. But he wasn't done. Backdraft! Izuku screamed, his voice cracking with authority. He's solidifying! Hit him with cold water. Now! The heroes were stunned. A middle schooler was giving orders, but in a crisis, people follow the loudest, most confident voice. Backdraft didn't question it. He saw the white foam. He saw the reaction. He turned his hose. A high-pressure jet of water slammed into the villain. The water mixed with the freezing foam and the sludge. The thermal shock turned the villain into a sluggish, heavy mud. Kamui Woods! Restrain him. He can't shapeshift while he's cold. Kamui Woods reacted. Lacquered chain prison. Wood branches shot out, wrapping around the slowed villain. But the villain was strong. He began to crack the wood. I won't be beaten by a quirkless brat. He surged forward, ignoring the wood, ignoring the water, aiming a killing blow at Izuku. Izuku braced himself. I bought time. That's all I could do. Then, the wind changed. Blood sprayed on the pavement. A figure appeared in front of Izuku. Not a skeleton. The giant. All Might had pushed past his limit. He had seen the boy run in. He had seen the strategy. He had seen the spirit. I really am pathetic, All Might grunted, steam pouring off him. Preaching to you about safety while I stand by and watch. All Might! Izuku gasped. All Might pulled back his fist. He didn't just grab the villain, he grabbed the air itself. Detroit. Smash! The punch was an updraft. It created a tornado. The sludge villain was atomized, scattered into the sky. The fire was blown out. The clouds above spiraled and parted. Rain began to fall. The crowd went silent. Then they erupted. All Might! All Might! Izuku slumped to the ground, his knees hitting the wet asphalt. He looked at Bakugo, who was coughing beside him. Bakugo looked at Izuku. His expression was unreadable. Terror? Anger? Respect? You! Bakugo rasped. Shut up, Kaken, Izuku whispered, smiling faintly. You're safe. The aftermath. The scolding session was confusing for everyone involved. Usually, the heroes scolded the vigilante kid. But Izuku wasn't just a kid who ran in. He was a kid who had solved the problem. That was incredibly dangerous. Death Arm shouted, pointing a finger at Izuku's chest. You have no quirk. You could have died. Izuku stood at attention, his hands behind his back. He didn't look down. He looked Death Arms in the eye. With all due respect, sir, Izuku said, his voice calm, you were doing nothing. Death Arms choked. What? The villain had a hostage in a hypoxic environment. Brain damage occurs after 4 minutes of oxygen deprivation. You were waiting for a suitable quirk. I calculated that the hostage didn't have time for your roster to update. Izuku gestured to the fire extinguisher. I utilized a Class B extinguisher to induce thermal shock, solidifying the colloid suspension. I created a tactical opening for backdraft and Kamui Woods. I didn't fight the villain. I managed the hazard. The heroes stared at him. Kamui Woods stepped forward. You commanded us. I relayed tactical data, Izuku corrected. Aizawa-sensei says communication is key in multi-agency operations. Aizawa? Empty Lady blinked. You mean Eraserhead? You know that creep? He is my mentor. The heroes exchanged glances. If this was Eraserhead's student, the insanity made sense. Look, kid, Death Arms sighed, rubbing his temples. You got guts. And you got brains. But don't do it again without a license. Police are gonna have a field day with the paperwork. Understood. On the other side of the blockade, the heroes were praising Bakugo. That quirk is amazing. You held out for so long. You're a natural hero. Bakugo ignored them. He was staring at Izuku. He was staring at the quirkless boy who had done more in 30 seconds than Bakugo had done in 10 minutes. The declaration. Sunset. The streets were drying. Izuku walked home, his backpack ruined, his uniform smelling of smoke and vinegar. Deku! Izuku stopped. He turned around. Bakugo ran up to him. He was panting. His eyes were red. I didn't ask for your help. Bakugo yelled. I didn't need you. I was fine, Izuku sighed. You were suffocating, Katsuki. Your lips were blue. Shut up. I don't owe you anything. I know. Bakugo grit his teeth. He shook with a mixture of rage and humiliation. Don't think this changes anything. I'm still going to be the #1 hero. I'm still better than you. Then prove it, Izuku said calmly. Next time, don't get caught. Bakugo recoiled as if slapped. He turned and stomped away, muttering curses. Izuku watched him go. He felt light. The fear of Bakugo was gone. It had been replaced by a strange sort of pity. Izuku turned to continue home. I am here. All Might slid out from around a corner, striking a pose. Whoa! Izuku jumped back, settling into a combat stance instantly. All Might? Why are you? Poof! All Might deflated into his skeletal form, coughing up an alarming amount of blood. Young Midoriya, All Might wheezed. I came to find you. To scold me? Izuku asked. Death Arms already did. No. All Might straightened up. I came to correct myself. Correct yourself? On the roof, All Might said, looking at the ground. I told you to be realistic. I told you that without a quirk, you couldn't be a hero. He looked up. His blue eyes burned with intensity. I watched the news feeds. I saw the footage. Do you know what I saw? A reckless kid interfering with a crime scene? No, All Might shook his head. I saw the pros standing still. I saw the crowd watching. I saw fear paralyzing everyone. All Might took a step forward. But you moved. You, the one with the least power, ran toward the danger. Why? Izuku thought about it. Why had he run? He had analyzed the situation, yes. He had a plan, yes. But before the plan, my legs moved on their own, Izuku whispered. I couldn't watch him die. Even if it was him, All Might smiled. It was a genuine smile. Top heroes, all of them have a story from their school days. They say that before they could think, their bodies moved. Izuku's eyes widened. Tears began to prick at the corners. You have the mind of a general, All Might said. You have the training of a soldier. But today, you showed the heart of a hero. All Might pointed a bony finger at Izuku. Izuku Midoriya. You can become a hero. Izuku dropped to his knees. He covered his face. He sobbed. He had heard it from Aizawa. But Aizawa was a logical teacher. Aizawa said he could be useful. All Might said he could be a hero. But All Might continued, I have a proposal. Izuku looked up, wiping his eyes. A proposal? I have a secret, All Might said. My quirk, it isn't natural. It wasn't something I was born with. It is a torch, passed down from one holder to the next. Izuku's analyst's brain short-circuited. Transferable? But genetic factors. DNA binding, that's theoretically impossible unless it is called one for All Might interrupted the muttering. And I have been looking for a successor. All Might looked at the boy. He saw the scars on his hands. He saw the tactical pen in his pocket. He saw the fire in his eyes. I originally looked for someone with a strong quirk. Someone someone powerful. But I realized something today. All Might clenched his fist. Power without spirit is empty. You have the spirit. You have the tactical mind. If I give you this power, you won't just be a strong hero. All Might grinned. You will be the greatest hero. He held out his hand. Do you want it? My power? Izuku looked at the hand. He thought about Aizawa. A hammer and a scalpel. If he took this, he would have both. He stood up. He dried his tears. I don't just want it, Izuku said, his voice steady. I'll earn it. And I won't waste it. All Might laughed. I know you won't. But first, All Might looked at Izuku's scrawny though toned frame. We need to train. You need a vessel capable of holding this power. I've been lifting trash at Dagoba Beach for 10 months, Izuku said. I can bench press 80 kilograms. All Might blinked. Dagoba? I thought that place was a dump. Aizawa-sensei makes me clean it while wearing 20 kilograms weights. All Might stared. Then he threw his head back and laughed. Aizawa? Of course. He did the hard part for me. All Might placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Then we are ahead of schedule, young Midoriya. But warn you, my training is different from Eraserhead's. He taught you to survive. All Might's eyes glowed. I'm going to teach you how to smash. Izuku smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. I can do both. The teacher's lounge at UA High was a sanctuary of silence, usually broken only by the hum of the refrigerator or the scratching of grating pens. Tonight, however, the silence was heavy, charged with the static electricity of a brewing storm. Shota Aizawa sat on the leather sofa, his posture deceptive. To an observer, he looked like he was napping, arms crossed, chin buried in his capture scarf. But his eyes were open, bloodshot and unblinking, fixed on the man sitting across from him. Toshinori Yagi, All Might in his deflated, skeletal form, sat on a folding chair that looked dangerously fragile under his frame. He nervously tapped his fingers against his knees. A cup of tea sat untouched on the table between them. You want to give him what? Aizawa's voice was low, a rumble of gravel. My quirk, Toshinori repeated, his voice lacking its usual boom. One for all. Aizawa uncrossed his arms. He didn't explode. He didn't shout. He became very, very still. It was the stillness of a predator deciding whether to strike. I have spent 2 years, Aizawa began, enunciating every syllable, breaking that boy down. I have stripped away his delusions of grandeur. I have taught him that he is physically inferior to 80% of the population, and that his only hope of survival is his intellect and his stealth. Aizawa leaned forward. I have built a soldier who fights from the shadows. A scalpel. And now, you want to hand him a nuclear warhead? Toshinori winced. It's not a warhead, Aizawa. It's a torch. It's a legacy. It's a target, Aizawa countered. You think I don't know about the history of One for All? I'm an underground hero. I know rumors. I know that people around you tend to get hurt. I know that your predecessor didn't die of old age. Toshinori looked down at his hands. No. She didn't. Midoriya is logical, Aizawa continued. He survives because he knows his limits. He knows he can't punch a way through a problem. If you give him that much power, you destroy his greatest asset, his caution. You'll turn him into another reckless idiot who thinks a smash solves everything. Like me? Toshinori smiled sadly. Yes. Like you? Aizawa didn't apologize. You are the symbol of peace. You are necessary. But you are also a blunt instrument. Midoriya is not you. He doesn't have your charisma. He doesn't have your ego. He is a nervous wreck held together by tactical tape and anxiety. He moved, Toshinori said softly. Aizawa paused. During the sludge incident, Toshinori looked up, his blue eyes burning with a spectral fire. When you were paralyzed by the variables, he moved. He didn't have a quirk. He didn't have a chance. But his body moved before his mind could stop him. Toshinori placed a hand over his chest, over the scar that destroyed his respiratory system. You taught him how to fight, Aizawa. You taught him how to think. But you couldn't teach him that. That spark? He was born with it. He is a vessel. A vessel that is currently empty, and you want to fill it. I want to give him a choice, Toshinori said. He wants to save everyone. With his current skill set, he can save many. But with one for all, he could save them all. Don't you think he deserves the tools to match his spirit? Aizawa stood up. He walked to the window, looking out at the UA campus. The robots were patrolling the grounds. He thought about the boy on the beach. The boy who puked after his first 5K run but kept running. The boy who memorized the tensile strength of Aizawa's capture tape. The boy who looked at a villain and saw a math problem. If Izuku Midoriya remained quirkless, he would be a great underground hero. He would be safe, relatively speaking. He would operate in the dark, catch criminals, and retire with bad knees. But if he had power, if he breaks, Aizawa said, his back to All Might, if this power destroys his body or his mind, I will personally ensure your retirement is miserable. Toshinori swallowed. I understand. Aizawa turned around. I will oversee the training. Huh? Toshinori blinked. But I have a plan. The American Dream Plan. Aizawa snatched the paper from Toshinori's hand. He scanned it. He scoffed. Cleaning up a beach? He's been doing that for 2 years. His core strength is already sufficient. If he follows this diet, he'll gain unnecessary bulk that will slow his agility. Aizawa ripped the plan in half. We do this my way. You provide the power. I provide the control. We have 10 months until the exam? No. We have 6 months to get him ready for the transfer, and 4 months to make sure he doesn't blow his arms off. Aizawa grinned, a terrifying expression that made the symbol of peace shiver. Welcome to hell, All Might. The meeting of minds. Dagoba Municipal Beach was unrecognizable. The mountain ranges of trash were gone, replaced by flat expanses of sand and neatly organized piles of recyclables waiting for pickup. The ocean view was clear for the first time in decades. Izuku Midoriya stood by the water, wearing his weighted vest. He was stretching, his movements fluid and precise. He checked his watch. 0500 hours. Young Midoriya, problem child. Izuku froze mid-stretch. He turned to see 2 figures walking toward him. On the left, All Might and his buff form a transformation he could maintain for about an hour in the mornings. On the right, Aizawa in his black jumpsuit, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. The visual contrast was jarring. It was like seeing a golden retriever walking next to a grim reaper. All Might? Sensei? Izuku looked between them. Why are you both here? Is the world ending? Close, Aizawa said. We're co-parenting. All Might laughed, a booming sound that startled the seagull. Ha! Indeed. Aizawa and I have had a long discussion about your future. Izuku gulped. Am I in trouble? Sit down, Aizawa commanded. Izuku sat in the sand cross-legged. The 2 heroes stood over him. You know about One for All Might started, his face turning serious. The power accumulation quirk. Yes, Izuku nodded. He pulled a notebook from somewhere. I wrote down some theories. Since it cultivates power, it implies a stockpile of kinetic energy, or perhaps a bioenergy enhancement that defies standard conservation laws. If it's passed down, does the genetic information of previous users transfer? Is it a parasitic quirk or a symbiotic one? All Might blinked. Sure. Symbiotic. Let's go with that. The point is, Aizawa cut in, All Might wants to give it to you. I have agreed to allow it. Under conditions. Izuku looked at Aizawa. Conditions? Condition 1. You do not neglect your stealth training, Aizawa listed. If I see you trying to punch your way out of a situation that requires finesse, I will expel you before you even enroll. Understood. Condition 2. You analyze the quirk before you use it. All Might is a natural. He got the power and just did it. You are not a natural. You are a nerd. Izuku's sweat dropped. Okay, so All Might stepped in, flexing his biceps. We need to prepare your body to receive the DNA. Usually, this would take months of heavy lifting, but All Might poked Izuku's shoulder. It was rock hard. You're actually pretty ripped, young man. Conditioning, Aizawa muttered. So we shift focus. All Might declared. We focus on the mental aspect. The vessel capacity, the science of the soul. The next 4 months were strange. Physical training continued, but it was maintenance. The real work happened in a rented warehouse near the beach. Visualize the power, All Might said. He was sitting on a crate, watching Izuku meditate. Imagine an egg in a microwave. If you don't lower the heat, the egg explodes. You have to keep the egg inside the shell. Izuku opened one eye. All Might, that's a terrible metaphor. It works for me. It works for you because you intuitively understand the containment, Izuku argued, pulling out a whiteboard. But scientifically, microwaves excite water molecules. If I treat the power like thermal expansion, I'm focusing on the pressure. But one for all is output, right? It's directional. Izuku drew a diagram of a hydraulic system. Think of my body as a series of pipes, Izuku explained, scribbling furiously. The power is the fluid. If I pump high-pressure fluid into a low-pressure pipe, the pipe bursts. I don't need to keep the egg from exploding. I need to open the valves. Aizawa, who was grading papers in the corner, looked up. Valves. Yes, Izuku tapped the board. The body has natural limiters to prevent muscles from tearing themselves apart. Hysterical strength is when the brain removes those limiters. One for all forces those limiters open. If I try to use 100% through a pipe meant for 10%, I break the bone. I need to widen the pipe. Or regulate the flow. All Might scratched his head. So, not an egg? No egg, Izuku said firmly. A regulator. Like a dimmer switch on a light. Aizawa smirked. He's right, All Might. Your teaching style is abstract. His learning style is mechanical. So how do we practice a dimmer switch for a power you don't have yet? All Might asked. Visualization, Aizawa stood up. Midoriya. Close your eyes. Izuku obeyed. You have a pool of water in your chest, Aizawa guided. It's deep. It's heavy. It wants to flood out. But you have a gate. Visualize the gate. Izuku frowned, concentrating. Okay. I see it. Open it a millimeter. Izuku tensed. He imagined the pressure. It's loud. Don't let it burst, Aizawa said. Control the stream. Just enough to fill your veins, not enough to burst them. Distribute it evenly, Izuku breathed. He imagined the network of veins in his body. He imagined the power not as a ball of fire, but as a grid of electricity. A circuit board. If I overload the circuit, the fuse blows. I need to run at low voltage. Keep doing that, Aizawa said. Every day. Until you can find that switch in your sleep. The transfer. 2 months before the entrance exam. The sun was rising over the ocean. The air was crisp. All Might stood on the pier. He held a single strand of golden hair. It is time, All Might said solemnly. Izuku stood before him. He felt ready. His mind was clear. His body was a coiled spring. Eat this, All Might said. Izuku stared. Aizawa stared. That's... Izuku paused. That's the delivery method? Oral ingestion of DNA? It has to be DNA. All Might said defensively. And it has to be given willingly. This is the fastest way. It's gross, Aizawa deadpanned. It's heroic. All Might insisted. Izuku sighed. He took the hair. He looked at it. Analysis. Keratin protein. Minor follicle attachment. Digestion will break down the cellular structure, but the quirk factor, it must be metaphysical, riding the genetic material as a carrier signal. Stop analyzing the hair and eat it, problem child, Aizawa said. Izuku swallowed it. He gagged slightly. Tastes like hair gel. Now we wait. All Might clapped his hands. It takes a few hours to digest and merge with your system. And then? Izuku asked. Then, Aizawa said, stepping forward. We go to the gym. And we see if you explode. The first spark. The UA gym gamma was empty. The floor was reinforced concrete. Izuku stood in the center. He wore his P uniform. All Might stood behind a blast shield. Aizawa stood next to him, hand on his scarf, eyes ready to erase the quirk at the first sign of bone breakage. Okay, young Midoriya! All Might shouted. Try to smash that punching bag. Izuku looked at the heavy bag hanging from the ceiling. He felt something. It was in his stomach at first, a warm knot. Then it began to spread. It wasn't like adrenaline. Adrenaline was hot and jittery. This was heavy. It felt like he had swallowed a star. It was a humming, vibrating presence that wanted to get out. It's enormous, Izuku thought, fear spiking for a second. It's too big. If I let this out, I'll die. Focus, Aizawa's voice cut through the panic. The valve. The circuit. Izuku closed his eyes. Don't look at the whole ocean. Just look at the tap. He visualized the power. It was a roaring torrent of yellow and red energy. He mentally built a wall around it. He reinforced the wall with every lesson Aizawa had taught him. Logic. Patience. Structure. Then, he installed the valve. He reached for the handle of the valve. He turned it. Just a fraction. 5%. The energy hissed. It leaked out of the containment, flowing into his arms, his legs, his chest. Izuku opened his eyes. Whoa, All Might whispered. Green sparks were dancing across Izuku's skin. They weren't erratic. They were rhythmic, pulsing with his heartbeat. The air around him hummed. He's not breaking, Aizawa noted, his eyes wide. He's coating himself. Izuku looked at his hands. Red veins of energy glowed under his skin, but they weren't tearing him apart. He felt light. He felt fast, full cowling. The name popped into his head. It's not a gun. It's armor, Midoriya, Aizawa called out. Move. Izuku twitched a muscle to take a step. Boom. The concrete under his foot cracked. He vanished. He didn't mean to move that fast. He reappeared instantly at the punching bag, 10 meters away. He had crossed the distance in a blink. Too fast. Izuku yelped, his momentum carrying him forward. He was going to crash into the bag. He instinctively raised his arm to block. Don't punch. Just guide. He channeled the energy into his arm. He didn't wind up. He just stiff-armed the heavy bag. Wham! The heavy bag, filled with 200 pounds of sand, didn't just swing. It bent in half. It flew off its chain, sailing across the gym and slamming into the far wall with a denting crash. Izuku landed on his feet. He skidded, his sneakers squeaking loudly. The green lightning faded. Izuku stood up, checking his arms. No broken bones. No purple bruising. Just a dull ache, like he'd lifted something heavy. He looked at his hands. They were trembling, but not from pain. From excitement. I did it, Izuku whispered. I am seeing. All Might burst from behind the shield, tears streaming down his face in waterfalls. Oh my goodness! He didn't break. He's a natural. A genius! Aizawa lowered his scarf. He let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He's not a natural, Aizawa corrected, watching Izuku inspect his fingertips. He's an engineer. He engineered a solution. Izuku turned to them. He was beaming. A smile so bright it rivaled All Might's. Sensei. All Might. Did you see? I used about 5%. The output latency is practically zero. If I adjust my footing, I can control the friction. All Might hugged him, crushing him into his chest. You did amazing, my boy. Amazing, Aizawa walked over. He tapped Izuku on the forehead. Ow, Izuku rubbed the spot. Don't get cocky, Aizawa said, though his voice lacked its usual bite. You handled 5%. All Might fights at 100%. You are still a toddler walking among giants. Yes, sir, Izuku nodded seriously. But I can walk. Yes, Aizawa agreed. You can walk. The final prep. The last month before the exam was refining the process. Izuku dubbed the technique full cowl. Aizawa focused on integrating it with the capture tape. Use the quirk to enhance the throw, Aizawa instructed. But turn it off when you pull. If you pull with super strength, you'll rip the target in half or snap the tape. Toggle switching, Izuku muttered. On. Off. On. Off. It was exhausting. The mental fatigue of constantly regulating the power was worse than the physical exhaustion. After an hour of maintaining full cowl, Izuku would have a migraine that felt like a drill in his temple. The headache is your brain running out of glucose, Izuku analyzed, drinking a juice box. The quirk consumes metabolic energy at an accelerated rate. Eat more candy, All Might suggested, offering a bag of gummies. Logic, Aizawa agreed, taking a gummy for himself. They worked on mobility. Izuku learned to kick off walls without shattering them mostly. He learned to land without creating craters. He also learned that 5% was enough to knock a normal person unconscious with a flick of a finger. You have to pull your punches, Aizawa warned. You aren't quirkless anymore. If you hit a purse snatcher with 5% full force, you'll be up on manslaughter charges. Control, Izuku repeated. Always control. The night before, Izuku sat in his room. His desk was covered in notebooks. Hero analysis number 13 was full. He opened number 14. First entry. The power of one for all. He wrote down everything he felt. The hum. The heat. The responsibility. He looked at his reflection in the window. He didn't see the timid boy anymore. He saw a young man with scars on his hands and a fire in his gut. His phone buzzed. A message from an encrypted number. Aizawa, sleep. If you yawn during the written exam, I'm failing you. Izuku smiled. He texted back. Izuku, yes, sensei. Thank you. He put the phone down. He looked at the All Might poster on his wall, the one he had put back up. I'm not going to be you, Izuku whispered to the poster. He thought of the stealth, the tape, the analysis, the green lightning. I'm going to be me. He turned off the light. The entrance exam, morning. The gates of UA High were imposing. Thousands of students were streaming in. Izuku walked among them. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't muttering. He wore his middle school uniform, but he walked with the gait of a soldier entering a battlefield he had already mapped out. Out of my way, Deku. Bakugo walked past him, bumping his shoulder. Izuku didn't stumble. He didn't even break stride. He absorbed the impact with a subtle shift of his weight, a habit from judo. Good luck, Katsuki, Izuku said calmly. Bakugo stopped. He turned around, confused. He expected stuttering. He expected fear. Don't tell me what to do, Bakugo growled, but there was no heat in it. He was eyeing Izuku. He noticed the way Izuku walked. The confidence. Whatever, Bakugo grunted, walking away. Izuku looked up at the main building. The glass reflected the sun. He took a deep breath. He visualized the valve in his chest. It was closed, but ready. He reached into his pocket and touched the roll of capture tape hidden there. Written exam first. Easy. Then the practical. Izuku stepped through the gate. I am here, he thought. And I am ready.